Well, Paul, they really did it. I'm so proud of what we've accomplished, man. Looks like we've got some more to talk about. Shall we let them back in? I think they'll enjoy what we have in store, and you have a commentary to record. Assuming they'll actually watch it. Well then, let us proudly present to you our newest addition to this dark painted iceberg that we call the Epic Mickey franchise, titled Gallery 1 of 3, Epic Mickey 3. You know what's truly scary? Franchises that have a 3 in the title of one of its properties. Oh, come on, Paul. It can't be that straightforward. Try me, Paul. Plenty more where this came from.
Yeah, threes.
Ah, green.
No, Taki Watiti from Green Lantern. I said threes, not greens. Anyway, before anyone gets upset, I don't mean to speak for every movie sequel under the sun. I like movies like Spider-Man 3, Nightmare on Elm Street 3. I like Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. I don't mean to speak for every film out there.
Moving on, if you don't mind. Our point is the third part of a series, especially an unplanned third part, is a very disastrous addition. Not every time, but far too many times. So, what does that say for Epic Mickey 3? Well, to be honest, it says very little, because there is no Epic Mickey 3. As much as both of us endlessly whined about Epic Mickey 2, The Power of 2, in our first gallery, it's not completely that game's fault. Junction Point Studios was officially announced to be closed down on January 29th, 2013, with Disney, of course, still owning full rights to this Epic Mickey IP, which means Warren Spector cannot legally make a third game with a different studio. Make no mistake, EM2 still only sold 529,000 units, barely over a quarter of the first game's sales, but the true reason this franchise and all planned spin offs were shot down was for one simple reason. Disney decided to focus on mobile and tablet games. Friggin' mobile games. We know what you did, Disney. We know. Now, because the amount of concept art I could find worth talking about significantly decreased from Game 1 to Game 2, it's no real surprise I can only find 2 official pieces of concept art for this game.
That's no small exaggeration from either of us. I can barely find any info on what the third game was going to be or its plans because they shut down Junction Point Studios so quickly after Epic Mickey 2's release. I can't find more than 2 drawings for this entire game. I'm really sorry to have so little to work with, but it's all I can do right now.
But we take what little we can get, don't we? First of all, it should be said that you can tell they planned to make a third game. In the end cutscene of Epic Mickey 2, either the thinner ending or the paint ending gives you a brief scene where all the Pete variants have seized Prescott the Gremlin and clearly seem to be the intended villains of the next game. If you thin out various areas of the Mad Doctor's attic, you'll also find costumes that the characters point out don't fit the Mad Doctor, and are actually from Pete's many costumes in Mickey and Oswald cartoons. Yes, Pete is several years older than Oswald and Mickey. Very few people understand that.
I personally have to point out that the exact quote from Big Bad Pete is, "Look at 'em all so happy. They ain't ever gonna know what hit 'em." The dry humor in me has to make the point that He was right that they didn't know it hit him, because it never hit him! Ha! God, I hate Disney.
My point being, the Pete's most likely would have been the main villains of Epic Mickey 3, leading us to the scariest thing I've ever seen for these games that I believe will have actually made it into the games. Maybe. Behold, Pete in drag! This drawing and the next one was drawn by Scott McSorley, who you can check out at the link on the screen. He has some cool Epic Mickey 2 concept drawings and models worth looking at. The idea for this game seems to be that all the different Pete's were going to take over beloved Disney worlds, Kingdom Hearts style, and become evil doppelgangers for their own big bad reasons. I admit Snow White's expression and the concept being trapped in her own mirror is a little dark for a Disney game, and I quite admire that. Especially with characters like Pete Pan already established in these games, I think this would have been a pretty cool and likely at least a little funny idea for an Epic Mickey 3. Can't you imagine the Pete of Hearts, or Malefa Pete, or Judge Pete Frollo, or Cruella de Pete? It could lead to some pretty funny designs and works. Hortensia made a few very small appearances in our first video, with her seemingly having been planned as an additional playable character. These drawings give us a look at some powers she would have had, including a gliding mechanic that may have predated Princess Peach's slow descent abilities in the 2D Mario games. The inert form is a pretty twisted reference to her being turned into a concrete statue in the first Epic Mickey game, now being turned into a strong and possibly devastating, physically this time, not emotionally, mechanic. On April 30th, 2015, Warren Spector responded to questions regarding the game. He stated that he really wanted to up the multiplayer action and make a truly interactive musical game, and make music in the context of a game that no music game has done yet. Spector also stated that the third game would have left Wasteland.
This interview was over 2 years after the shutdown of Junction Point Studios, which made January 29th of this year the 10th anniversary to the death of the Epic Mickey franchise, abandoned by Disney.
Now, if you'd like to know what we personally would like to see for an Epic Mickey 3 on modern day consoles, well, oh, just you wait. Gallery 2 of 3. Epic Donald. I'll handle this section, if you please, Paulk. Go right ahead, Duckman. Cute. I am an absolutely massive Donald Duck fan. He's always been the character I grew up with more and always like better in all kinds of incarcerations. I don't mean to say that that makes Mickey a bad character. Donald is just the one I find far more interesting and entertaining to watch. Maybe I just find the blue guys so much more interesting than the red guys. Huh. Because of this, the fact that a Donald and DuckTales centered spin off to Epic Mickey, based on the stories of the legendary writer and artist himself, Carl Barks, was canceled in less than a year, suffering the same fate as Epic Mickey 3, personally hurt me far worse. I believe that the original DuckTales and pre second half of Season 3 of the 2017 DuckTales reboot are some of the greatest Disney animated projects of all time, and they owe their origins to Carl Barks' hundreds of stories and classic Duck family characters that he first created. This is a world handmade for an open adventure and platformer like Epic Mickey's. Warren Spector clearly had a passion for Bark's work and the idea of this game, and believe me, I would have been ecstatic at a concept like this coming to light. Even more than Epic Mickey's concepts, the story and game seemed gift wrapped by the Disney history. This time from the 10-cent comic books published by companies like Dell and Gold Key, instead of the classic matinee cartoons. Donald Duck, like Mickey Mouse, is no stranger to a variety of video games, especially 2D platformers in the 90s and early 2000s. But the duck doesn't get special treatment just because he's much more fun to write and his character lends himself to far more ideas and stories than the mouse. Many of these games are beloved classics, especially on the Sega Master System, Mega Drive, and other consoles, and some of them we will cover in the future. Donald in the Epic Mickey games was an animatronic built by Oswald, like Goofy and Daisy. He kept his personality traits to moderate success, but Donald still had about as much screen time in both games as he did in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, now lacking a bombastic piano duel with Daffy Duck. This here was the only existing in-game screenshot we publicly have of Epic Donald. Donald's model, in my opinion, looks great. Instead of a brush, he seems to be holding a long, thin silver flashlight like a torch. My theory is the torch might have acted like the elemental powers of Luigi's Poltergust in the first Luigi's Mansion, able to use different abilities to solve puzzles and defeat enemies. It says the running time is 28 seconds long. That's 28 seconds I definitely would have valued getting my hands on to analyze more. Just a while ago, when editing this video, I found the following clip from a video on YouTube, referenced in this article on screen about Epic Donald. It's not a lot to go off of, and I don't like Slope's tone regarding how he got it, but it's completely worth the look and is still more info than we got for Epic Mickey 3. I don't have a lot to add as I want to continue focusing on the concept art for these videos right now.
So many other awesome games got cancelled, including this one. Epic Donald. Make sure you hit subscribe, people, because what you're seeing right here is actually never before seen footage of the Epic Mickey spin-off game, Epic Donald, that was recently sent in to me by an anonymous fan of the show, and that's all I gotta say about that. So don't even ask.
I noticed in the short clip that we see Mickey following Donald around. There are also brief shots of what looks like a throne room, with gold coins falling from the ceiling and a dock with a pirate vibe. The green ball around the two may be a placeholder version of Oswald's electricity ball from using the remote in Epic Mickey 2. The rest of this section is entirely analyzing concept art for the game, as no further game footage or concepts of mechanics are currently available. I will discuss the pieces I found most interesting and how they tie into Barks' work, but probably won't make a lot of theories or assumptions on how it could have worked. I'll of course get more commentary than just descriptions from the Epic Donald fandom, but not a lot else. Warning, there are a total of 83 pictures in the entire concept art gallery on the Epic Mickey wiki. I ended up doing multiple pictures per slide, as many of them are for the same area, level, theme, what have you, and I encourage you to check out the entire gallery for yourself. It's well worth it for any Disney fan, and especially any Duck Family fans. I will talk about parts of it later, but the link on screen is to an article on the Epic Mickey fandom, where one of the artists for Epic Donald actually talked about the history, and it's well worth reading. And I'll get more into that soon. I need to give a brief apology right now before we start continuing on this section that you won't see me very often on screen as I go over the concept art. In making this video, I seem to have a lot of trouble drawing myself successfully and giving myself meaningful expressions, and it was an additional layer of editing I just did not have the energy to add upon for this section, considering I'm already so late in getting this video out. So I apologize for that. The first level in the game was titled Junkyard Dog. In it, Donald searches for old car parts in the local junkyard near his house. Gyro can then use the parts to start upgrading Donald's beat up automobile. A guard dog keeps giving Donald problems as he tries to take car parts there. Outside of the fact that the guard dog in this concept art looks like a brown Marmaduke, I like this idea a lot. I think it's a great way to start out the game, probably introduce you to mechanics, and the wider mechanic of finding car parts to upgrade and change Donald's beat up automobile. As that it was not only a constant staple of Karl Barks' work, Donald's classic 313 red automobile, it also was going to be a core part of the gameplay, as shown in the bottom picture he was going to be able to turn it into a variety of other vehicles just with parts. I also like how the dog seems more like overly exuberantly friendly rather than hostile, as Donald's trying to get away with the parts he found, which is a fun idea. That feels more in tone with a Disney game and the Disney comics, where Donald is only in peril or in threat when the bad guys are there, not when a animal is there. The animal is just over exuberantly happy. Donald time travels to Duckburg's past to try and capture an American bison for Scrooge McDuck's fancy outdoor zoo. Donald runs into trouble with Beagle Boy rustlers, wild animals, and his own general lack of cowboy abilities, and eventually has the people of Duckburg run over by a buffalo stampede. The Duckburg citizens are angry, so they tar and feather Donald and shoot him out of a cannon. He ends up landing on a bison and gets stuck to it, making delivery of the beast to Scrooge possible. I love this concept for a level. This is just pure Donald Duck comics to me. Uh, the time travel gimmick was what the whole game was going to be based around, in him going to go to various points in the past to find treasures and such. But this just feels so much in line with Donald's character, where he's strong willed, good hearted, and extremely temperamental. And he ends up still winning in the end, no matter what. He just has to go through something in order to earn it. It makes complete sense that he would accidentally destroy the Duckburg's fort, in this case, Fort Duckburg, instead of the town of Duckburg, likely. And I do love him getting tar and feathered, especially since he's a duck, so he's already feathered. Just all around, a great concept here. I think this would have been a lot of fun to watch. A classic American pioneer story like this, something Disney did a lot of. Here are some additional info that I was able to find on the American colonists world, or whatever it might have been called. On the left, we have Donald Duck and his lucky cousin Gladstone Gander playing cards against the classic character Soapy Slick, who is obviously cheating, and Donald getting shot at by one of the Beagle Boys, a classic foil of Scrooge McDuck in Barks' comics. On the right side is a new image I was able to find of more info of the great buffalo hunter Donald Duck, including him unsuccessfully catching one, accidentally destroying Fort Duckburg, and finally an official piece of art of him landing on the buffalo after being tarred and feathered, completing his mission for Scrooge. Again, some really great images here. I think the Wild West or American Colonists or whatever you might have called it, it's hard to tell with some of these pictures, would have worked great for Donald Duck. And I love that we get to see the finale with him finally landing on a buffalo, unhappily but successfully completing his mission. In this level, you are in an abandoned amusement park with Mickey, and you enter a building called the Carnival of Fear. Upon entering the carnival, Mickey and Donald find an evil ghost clown. At some point in the level, you would have seen what the carnival looked like in its prime. I have some more images of this in a minute, but I have to say now that I love this idea for a level absolutely. I'm a huge fan of haunted carnivals, fun houses, classic Joker and Batman stories, of course Foul Play and Funland from the original Scooby-Doo series. I love these stories so much. They always give me a great swell of joy and creativity. So I'm really glad to see that that was something they had in mind here. I've got some really pretty shots of this idea though in the next slide, so just a second. These don't it doesn't do justice to have these blown up on here on this slide, but I highly encourage you to check these out because these are gorgeous drawings by Patrick Block, I believe. They give you a great idea of the carnival run down, broken apart, and we have no idea what the intention was for Donald and Mickey to be in here, but I am all for an idea like this. It looks simply great. This is one of the few points in the concept art that I was able to see Mickey. So it really intrigues me just how much they were going to let them freely make this a Donald Duck story, and if Mickey was just going to show up in moments to help out. Especially considering we're not really sure, or at least at this time, if Epic Mickey was going to be an extension for this game, or rather, this game was going to be an extension of Epic Mickey, or its own separate thing that had the title Epic Donald slapped onto it. This level involves the return of Goo, the abominable snowman, who sneaks into Uncle Scrooge's museum in an attempt to recapture the lost crown of Genghis Khan. Donald's job to earn extra money would be a night guard at the museum for Scrooge, which is when he encounters Goo. What's really important about these pictures is that they show off two key aspects of the Barks comics, and especially the Walt Disney comics and stories all around across its over 70-year run at this point. The first one being very unique characters like Goo here, with vibrant, wild designs that you wouldn't normally see in a Disney cartoon, but are still pretty memorable for their unique, wild craziness, something Barks had a major hand in doing. The second part being MacGuffin treasure hunt style quests, which were a very common occurrence, especially since Uncle Scrooge, despite being the richest duck in the world, always was looking for new ways to find treasure, not just to possess and become richer, but also for the thrill of adventure and to bring the treasures to light. This is a key example, as the Lost Crown of Genghis Khan, I'm pretty sure, was originally possessed by Goo in the comics years ago. So this would be a way to do proper homage to the stories, building off of them, not ripping them off. It's a great example of this, and if you're a Karl Barks fan, you know exactly what I'm talking about. This level features Scrooge McDuck peering at a ghostly miniature version of the Haunted Mansion in the window of a pawn shop, and a ghostly figure drags the world's richest duck in. The level features inventions by Gyro Gearloose, and we see Donald shrinking down and traveling to the mansion to track down his lost uncle. I, like many others, of course, absolutely love the Haunted Mansion ride at Disneyland. It's a wonderful example of Disney being willing to go darker than they often will refuse to. Even with its abysmal movie with Murphy that I personally loathe, and the fact that I have absolutely no hope for the new one, which, as of this recording, has been pushed to July of this year, so that the Marvels will not come out until November. I really wish I had hope for it, but that's something I will discuss another time. This is, of course, just another really cool concept for some spookier ideas, and maybe even some cameos from the Lonesome Ghosts, as we saw them in Epic Mickey 2. That is one of, in my opinion, the most iconic Mickey, Donald, and Goofy cartoons, and really showed how well those three characters worked off each other in the past. So I'd love to see them make a return for something like this. This is my favorite picture so far I have ever covered in this series. Genuinely, so far, this is my absolute favorite. For starters, to the right, we have a couple images of Ace Duck, likely Donald trained to be a pilot in a biplane and having issues at the Duckburg Zoo. But what makes me laugh most is, of course, the top left image of, for no reason, Donald gleefully jumping up and down on his couch with a Wii remote and nunchuck as his nephews look on in disapproval and concern. This is a classic staple of many Donald Duck stories, with the nephews having to be far more adult than Donald himself, especially the shiny new exciting toy. And I just love the exasperation on their faces watching him geek out over this new gaming system. But the biggest thing that makes me laugh, if you look really closely at the image, is the fact that, absolutely no disrespect to you, Mr. Block, but there's no cord on that nunchuck Donald is holding, and the Wiimote cord where the nunchuck should be is stretched down to the bottom to where should assume it's connected to the TV. And I just can't help but laugh at that as someone who has owned a Wii for most of my life. How hilariously awkward a mistake that is. I don't need dragging on. One additional part they'll go over that's an interesting fact is that the nephews are both wearing solid black shirts there, and that's not a mistake. In many of Barks' stories, I think either to save on coloring or because they didn't want to try and match it up with what the nephews were saying at all times for consistency's sake, they kept them all in black shirts instead of their usual red, blue, and green. Huey being red, Dewey being blue, and Louie being green. This was changed at times, as is in the cartoons, and could be pretty inconsistent. But since in the comics you would be constantly trying to match up previous panels to figure out who said what and try and keep it as consistent as you can, as the nephews don't constantly say their names in every shot, it made sense to stick with black shirts. Okay, well, I talked a lot about how much I love that last picture. This one really makes me laugh because this is such a wacky concept. So, based only on the pictures, because there's no real description for these, it seems like the idea was plutonium or something at the Duckburg power plant was going to infect most of Duckburg, including the Beagle Boys, and turn them into zombies, but exclusively metal eating zombies to be more kid friendly. So, of course, that would make it an intense threat to Scrooge McDuck because they would be coming to eat up his money bin and all of his money. And it's such a silly and absurd concept that I can't help but laugh. Just looking at it. And of course, we see Gyro eating up his poor light bulb assistant, whose name I have to edit in right now because I forgot it. And it's just so funny to look at. Like, this is such a silly concept, but I think it could have been a really funny level. I wouldn't be surprised if it never made it into the final game, but just the fact that it exists really makes me smile. There's a few other worlds in Patrick Block's concept art that I didn't go over, including some space battles and some dinosaur prehistoric story. I'm probably going to cover those either another time or leave those for others to get to discover for themselves. I want to go over these two pieces, which were not done by Block, one of which was definitely done by Chad Townsend, and they're an interesting look at more how the world design would have worked rather than the storylines, as it seems like they were going to go for a pseudo platform style, very different to the world of Epic Mickey, unless this was more like an icon, a world map, just an overall design. It has a significant Aztec or Mayan style to the temple on the left side, a staple again of Bark's work, classic cultural treasures and legends brought to life in the modern Disney way. Well, modern at that time. But if you think that means that we're now done with Epic Donald, I'm afraid you're mistaken, because I have one last very special piece that I get to share with all of you. Gallery 2.5 of 3, a letter from Patrick Block. One of my fellow colleagues and Epic Mickey fans on YouTube, Charles, Picture Deer, was able to contact the concept artist Patrick Block during my development of this video, and both of us were able to ask some questions in an email to him. I'm going to be reading his response back, word for word, and this was an incredible opportunity to speak with an official member of the Epic Donald team. Thank you so much, Mr. Block, and I hope you found this video a worthy history and synopsis of your designs and the legacy of the Duckman himself, Carl Barks. I can't thank you enough for this opportunity, sir. It was really special getting to hear your words and getting this information. I really hope this video has done justice to your creations and designs.
So, especially because Patrick Block wears glasses, I wanted to read the whole letter wearing these, but they make it way too blurry, so I can't even make out the words. So, I just have to do it as myself, I guess. Greetings. I came into the Epic Donald project directly through Warren Spector himself. My writer wife Shelley and I knew Warren from our shared love of Disney stuff. Warren was a fan of our work and bought some watercolor pieces from us in the years before the Epic Games, and we are all big fans of Carl Barks' duck work. Carl was one of the best cartoonists of the 20th century, and we all adored his work. I was lucky enough that Carl was so long-lived that I learned to read at a very young age on his comics in the 1960s, and still got to work with him on his very last duck story in the 1990s. As a result, I was only minimally aware of Warren's epic project initially. He would come visit us at our table at San Diego Comic-Con during the years of the first game's production. It was clear he was extremely knowledgeable about all things Mickey. Disney was so lucky to have someone of his talent and caliber working on the project. I can't recall what year he first mentioned an Epic Donald spin-off, but I suspect it was quite early on. With Carl Barks' huge story backlog and the quality of his material, it was just a natural thing to want to do. A Donald game based on Bark's work would naturally be epic, and if one followed in his writing footsteps, could come out fantastic. Warren probably mentioned to us getting involved in the project in July 2011 at Comic Con. We definitely got the green light to roll on both story/episode ideas, 20 of them, and corresponding color storyboard kinds of paintings, around 60 boards, about early March of 2012. As Disney creators doing comic book stories, we are somewhat unique in that we create full finished stories, both writing and art, from scratch. The ability to do it all with high quality results and our intimate relationship with the old Duckman made us obvious candidates for the part Warren wanted us to play. We had an end of May deadline for the work, which meant an extreme amount of material to produce in a very short amount of time. I put all other projects aside, and the first thing I did was to draw myself a tight map of the various locales found in and around Duckburg and Uncle Carl's stories. I had a lot of fun trying to tie the pieces into logical order around Donald's house. We did not have a lot of information outside of what we need to know about the basic concepts of the game. Warren told us that a smaller independent studio, Blitz Game Studios, was doing the work. Warren wanted someone aboard in the early conceptual work that was very familiar with Carl's stories, and who could point the computer artists/game designers in the right direction, which is what we tried to do. Basically, Warren told us the idea was for the player to roleplay being Donald himself. Possibly, the game would have a multiplayer element, where Mickey and/or Scrooge could also be played by players alongside Donald. The crux or MacGuffin of the game was to be a time travel wristwatch from Gyro Gearloose that Donald would use to solve, or cause, problems in and around Duckburg. We were to construct creative scenarios where Donald is sent back in time on missions. The player would have Donald's jalopy to move about town, and in payment for his services, Gyro would offer Donald upgrades. Each player could upgrade as they saw fit into race cars or boat cars, balloon cars, etc. to get around. So our ideas were spun around this traveling in time scenario. We tried to use different methods/problems and made some episodes as mysteries, some as ghost stories, some Old West, future space stories, and really mixed it up. I kept the art to my favorite of some of these storylines and still have the art here. The end of the project and junction point came very quickly and I think unexpectedly. We just squeaked through getting paid due to Warren really going to bat for us in a big way. I guess the whole project was history by midsummer, as far as I can remember. Donald has always been our main character, and is the one I prefer to write and draw. He is an everyman, unlike Scrooge, and has all the foibles that real human beings do. I'm not positive that was meant to be foils, or if that was a word I'm not familiar with. This makes him easy to write for. I don't really think there were any real game ties planned between Epic Donald and the Epic Mickey games. They were very different concepts, though Warren had asked me to include Mickey in some of the story concepts. This was very much a Carl Barks inspired game design. I was very surprised to see the Blitz animated concepts turn up. It was cool to see the square eggs story ideas come to life. I'm afraid the nature of the work we did, the narrow compartmentalization, led to us not having any broader look into the game. We just worked with the info Warren provided, and I sent scans of our work and ideas off to Blitz Studios without much comment or interaction. We really had complete creative freedom due to Warren's trust in our skills, and did our best to try and be fresh and interesting with the work. Much of the material available online today were photos/scans people snatched from eBay. It definitely is encouraging to see the game has not been totally forgotten. I appreciate fans and historians taking an interest in this project, which was a real labor of love and a tribute to the great duck artist, Carl Barks. Very best wishes, Patrick Block. Thank you very much for your time and efforts, Mr. Block. I greatly appreciate whether you get to see this video or not. It means a lot from one true duck fan to another to have gotten to do this. Thank you, sir. Paulk, our last gallery.
Gallery 3 of 3, an epic Mickey movie. I honestly have so little to say about the possibility of an epic Mickey movie. I'm going to read off of some of the direct EM fandom wiki, as there really isn't a lot to go by for this. Epic Mickey was a planned film by Junction Point Studios and Warren Spector. It was presumably based on the original Epic Mickey game. Development never began beyond initial pitches due to Disney's lack of interest. Big shock. Very little is known about the film, as the proposal was very quickly turned down by Disney for reasons currently unknown. In a Reddit AMA, Warren Spector mentioned he had sent Disney a few renders and a pitch trailer, but Disney still wasn't interested in the project. Disney still kept the trailer, but no one knows if it still exists. Thanks. I love the storyboard slash concept look of our cinematics. You bet that's coming back, and this time they have full speech. Here's a secret. I actually wanted slash want to do a feature film that looks like that and put together a killer trailer. So far, Disney's not biting, but if enough people ask, maybe I'll get to make it, or at least release the trailer. I'll say again, Disney kept the trailer, so the public doesn't get to see it. So it exists in Disney's vault for no flipping reason. Paulk, if you don't mind, I'm just going to cut you off here. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I have my own 2 cents about all this. I think these sum it up pretty well. I'd love to see what all of you can come up with, but the bottom left one in particular really summarizes Disney's abysmal treatment of this franchise and its possibilities. These are the best analogies I have for it, all things considered. Sums up the franchise pretty well. And as of February 2023, now this meme is a reality. God. Now, getting more back on track, I have only 2 clips that seem to have been designed for a trailer, neither of which were officially released by Disney. I don't have much to comment on other than they do look great, and I dearly miss 2D animation. As much as I would have preferred, had this movie gone through, they stuck with the Oswald blot concepts from my first video that I discussed, which I still find is a far stronger ending to the game and a much darker and more exciting storyline. I understand if they went gone that route, the same I understood then. I didn't agree with it, but I understand. Here, take a look and see what you think. It's important to understand with that second clip that there's no audio, at least on the version I was able to find. So I don't know what Donald was saying there. And you'll notice in the bottom left hand corner that there was a separate part for the Powerhouse animation reel for the movie and then Epic Mickey 2's official animations, making me think it might have been the same company doing it, which would have been interesting. Before I finish, this is another brief chat Charles ended up having with a previous member of the Epic Mickey team. I really appreciate this information from Chase Jones, but I understand why he can't give public information. Disney fully owns the Epic Mickey IP and Oswald, so they have full and complete copyright power over anyone else involved with this franchise. I may end up talking with Chase Jones further in the future, possibly, but we'll have to see about that. With this, we must depart from Wasteland and find ourselves back in bizarre, strange reality. Epilogue, or Epic Mickey Fandom, nearly 13 years later. As of February 2023, the Epic Mickey franchise is 6 feet under. I can't see any of these projects we've discussed, nor ones for the future, ever being revived or being recognized by Disney ever again, besides copyright claiming our videos and others on YouTube freely. No Epic Mickey 3, no Epic Donald, and no Epic Mickey movie. But many hold on hope and especially think one day we could see a remake or remaster of the original game. Seeing as how I closed us out last time, I thought it was only fair that Paul close us out this time, and let us know how he feels about that idea. Thank you.
You really think so, Paulk? Alright. No matter who returned for it, I can't see a world where Epic Mickey 3 would work, especially over 10 years after the second game. It's been too long for anything to work at this point, and there's another problem beyond that. I think, as a member of the Epic Mickey fanbase, that we're a wonderful community of fans, and we all have our own opinions and ideas, for better and for worse. There would never be a version of Epic Mickey 3 that the majority of us loved or were satisfied with. It wouldn't feel right. We would all have issues with it. We'd be annoyed. We'd be frustrated that our version wasn't on there. To a point, it works for this franchise to have hit an end officially, in my eyes. Just not for it to fall into being discarded and extinct. We keep the spirit and ideas of this franchise alive. Any Epic Mickey fans pushing to bring back the franchise officially by Disney aren't putting their efforts where they should be. If you go on Reddit and type out monologues and endless letters to Disney begging them to bring it back, if you make YouTube videos talking less about the impact of this franchise and its possibilities and more complain about never getting Epic Mickey 3 or demanding that something be done with it again after all these years, it's not helping. Whether you think it is or not, it's not going to do anything. You are essentially shouting into the wind. And I don't want that to be all that you are known for as a member of this fan base. We are historians and fans, not activists and influencers. I would support a full remaster of the original Epic Mickey. But any more, in my eyes, cannot work beyond the hypothetical. Too much time has passed, and Disney did not show that they could wield the potential of this franchise successfully on multiple occasions. I still stand by that the original Epic Mickey deserved better, and that we as a fan base deserved much better than the condition that Epic Mickey 2, The Power of Two, was released in. I still feel that we were owed better than what Disney initially gave us and continued to give us before this franchise died. And as I have gone over with Paulk today, there is so much that they squandered and ignored the possibilities of at the cost of others. I see no reason that would change with this game. But all that is honestly just my opinion. The opinion of one fan. I don't speak for everyone, and I don't pretend that my opinion is the word of God or the word of Walt Disney. It's just my opinion as a member of this franchise. So please join me next time as I give a full audio developer's commentary on the thought process and making of my first Epic Mickey video. Entirely what went into it as this one fan. And then my friend Weekend Deadpool and I will proudly delve into the 3DS game Epic Mickey Power of Illusion, technically the third game in the Epic Mickey franchise, and its influences and possibilities that it held in its own right, as well as a few minor things I have yet to touch on about this franchise and its canceled possibilities. From me and my demon Paulk, we thank you for joining us on yet another chapter of this unique and fascinating franchise in Disney's history. And I hope we'll see you again soon. Never let yourself be consumed by the negative, thinner side of life. and take your own paintbrushes, face down your shadow blots, and paint your own path to good, no matter what path it may be. The Epic Mickey franchise is defunct. That doesn't mean it should ever be forgotten.